In this video, I talk about how to run a mastermind meeting. I invited my friend Rob Atkinson. He and I are in a mastermind group together, and we talk about how we run our meetings and our experiences in other meetings. I'm Doug Cunnington. I'm the founder of Niche Site Project, and I talk about internet marketing and project management. If you're new to the channel, have a look around. If you like what you see, please subscribe. Hey Rob, how's it going?
Good. How's it going, Doug?
Pretty good here. This is the session on running a mastermind meeting. So the last time we talked about the advantages, the pros and cons of having a mastermind group and how it's, sort of shaped the way, Rob and I have been able to grow over the last few years. So today we're going to talk about actually running a meeting. Now, from my perspective, it was actually like fairly straightforward. So I was a project manager in my old corporate job, and mainly, like most of my activities were setting up meetings and running meetings and creating agendas and then facilitating the meetings. So it was kind of like exactly the same kind of work I was doing before. I didn't realize that was actually like a useful skill. Once Rob and I formed the group, it ended up working pretty well that I could, sort of organize certain things and then help the meeting move forward. Now, that is something that everyone can develop the skill. I was awful when I first started, in my corporate job. Got really nervous trying to run a meeting, and, maybe you don't know people really well and you have to, tell them to hurry up or, let other people talk. And actually, those are some of the main issues that people have. So people may not have any idea how to actually just run a meeting, right? It sounds straightforward to say, but it's just hard to do sometimes, especially if someone starts talking and they don't stop talking. So usually if you put a group of people together, there is someone who will kind of dominate a little bit. Now, the other part is when you have meetings, you want them to like start on time and end on time. Again, sounds simple, but in practice, when you have a few people, it could be difficult, and you have to do this stuff in a tactful way so you don't piss everyone off. And the last thing, it kind of goes hand in hand with what I mentioned before, but like if you just don't have a very tight structure for your meeting, one person is probably going to dominate and other people are going to be a little shy. I'm fairly like introverted and kind of quiet. I wait and see like what happens and then I'll speak up. Usually I'll try and make some funny remark, but it doesn't always work out. But the point is someone like will probably take over if you have a few people. Now, before we get into the details of it, I will mention we're going to talk about the agenda, how often to meet, logistics of the meeting, and sort of how to grow and be flexible. Before we get into that, it's important to understand like what size of a mastermind group this can work for. So Rob, I talked for a long time. I need to catch my breath. What do you think about the size of groups and that sort of thing?
Right. So if you caught our last video, we were talking about, having different minds to help you uncover problems in your business and see it from a different perspective. So, okay, I've had 2, 3, 4, and 5 number of people in my group. Currently, I have a 3-member group, which includes you, me, and some other guy. And I have a one-on-one with someone. I don't really recommend the one-on-one. I'm doing it because, we're both at very similar levels. He's a good kid, but I think 2 is kind of limiting. I think 3 and 4 is kind of the sweet spot. I think 3 gives you enough different perspectives and it's not too hard to manage. If you can pull off 4, kudos to you, that I would go that direction. And then I personally feel like 5 and more is just going to be a train wreck in most cases.
Right. So I agree with everything you just said. So I'm not even going to, like go over it. But the agenda and the ideas we're talking about in this video are mainly around like that 3 to 5 person range. And if you want to do something different, right? Let's say you want to have a group with 12 people. Maybe you don't meet as often, right? Maybe you meet once a quarter or something like that and stay in touch in some mechanism. But if you meet less frequently, it's easier to manage. Basically, if you have, 3 to 5 people, you're able to meet in a shorter period of time and everyone has the opportunity to speak. But if you have 12 people and everyone wants to talk for 5 minutes, I mean, that's just an hour right there, right? If I did the math right. Hopefully I did. It's tough to do it.
That's a good point. And you're managing a lot of, like you spoke about earlier, you're also managing a lot of different personalities and motivations and yeah.
Yep. So with that said, this is focusing on, the sort of sweet spot for the mastermind group that we defined last time in this type of a group. The, thing I'll mention as we're getting started, leave us a comment and let us know your agenda. If you have a mastermind group, let us know your agenda. Interested to see how other people structure theirs. Where, like Rob and I have been in multiple groups and we've changed the structure multiple times. So, that's one thing that we're open to. If there's something that other people are doing that we can take advantage of, then we'll do it. So, all right, the agenda. It's a pretty, standard agenda that I've seen for this internet marketing, sort of group, but it should apply to any kind of mastermind group you have. There are three main sections. Number one is talking about quick wins. So everyone, it's kind of a roundtable situation. Everyone spends, a minute or two talking about a win, something positive that happened in the last week or two, right? So since the last meeting, you talk about something good that happened. It puts a positive note on the meeting. And, one of the key things you have to make sure of is to keep it tight in the beginning. So if you talk about your quick wins, you do want these to be quick. If you have someone that goes on for 10 or 15 minutes, then you ruin your whole timeline for the meeting. Rob, anything on the quick win section?
No, I think you nailed it. You really have to kind of start off positive and kind of set the right tone for the meeting. We're all humans, but we've definitely had meetings with us where we just start off on tangents. Today we kind of got off on one of those, but it happens, but yeah.
Then the majority of the meeting is spent on what's called the hot seat. So one person has the floor to work through a problem, right? You're presenting a problem or an issue or something you need help with. It could be a big like vision issue that you're having where you're like, I'm not sure what to do with my business, or if it's, I have an opportunity to start a service business, but I also have, this affiliate marketing thing that I'm interested in too. Like it could be something like that where you kind of weigh the pros and cons, or it could be like strategic. I brought a problem in a little while back on like email automation marketing, really. And it was all about, the nuts and bolts of using a tool like Aweber or Drip or GetResponse and like how to build an email, auto response sequence. So very technical, and, it could be anywhere in between too. And I think this is sort of the area where you get a benefit from having all the minds, the mastermind group. Like this is where the problems are solved.
Totally agree. I would add one thing about this section that's crucial to the success of your group. So if it's your turn to be on the hot seat, right, you bring your problem, you have the ability to be as selfish as you need to be. This is your time. But when it's the next meeting and it's, if it's your hot seat or somebody else, you got to make it all about that person. And I've seen it over times where someone brings up a problem and then someone answers it by like saying, oh, I have that same problem and I'm struggling here. It's like, no, like we're talking about you. So
yeah, I've probably done that. Was that directed at me, Rob?
Former member.
Gotcha. No, and as you said it, I was like, I wonder if it does sound, everyone as you're working through, like helping other people, like you are thinking about yourself and experiences. So
true.
But you're 100% right. Like the floor is yours. So you could bring in, like I said, minute problems like I did that day. And, I figured it out because you guys told me what to do.
Like, if a lot of trust there and it spirals to like a thing where that it comes up and there's something you need help with, that's cool. But just in general, especially at the beginning, if you consistently see someone, taking the floor and hogging it and all that stuff, it's not a good sign.
Yep. And that is sort of like the job of the facilitator. And I'll talk about that in just a second. But when these hot seats are coming around, the other, key thing is present the information as soon as possible, right? So when you're really good at this, Rob, so you'll prepare like a Google Doc and send it out to us like a week ahead of time where you're like, here is what I'm working through. Here's the thesis. Here are the bullet points of like the background information you need to know. And, here's what I'm thinking. And then you don't have to spend the whole time explaining like the problem. You can talk about clarifications, kind of set the stage, let us know if you've learned anything new. But if you do all that ahead of time, then you're saving a bunch of time and you're just working on like the solution of the problem, not explaining the problem.
Yeah, and to add on to that, personally myself, like I'm not very good at thinking on my feet. Like you should see me on the phone sometimes and people ask me like in an interview, I'm horrible.
Oh yeah, I could attest to that.
I'm horrible. So if someone doesn't bring it to the table and I'm trying to on a call like critically think of something or a solution,
Right.
my answers are going to be 100 times worse than if I had 30 minutes to like let it sink in.
Yep. And then on some other level, you get a benefit from cleaning up the thinking by writing it out. So if you walk in and you explain it, it's all the information in your head, but when you write it down, like it cleans up. So, and I think, yeah, you're nodding. So it's huge just to brain dump, get it out of your head, and then you can edit it, clean it up, and then it's much more clear for everybody. So the last part of the meeting would be like upcoming goals. So you don't have to do this. I guess, found that it's kind of nice to just mention one goal at the end, like your major thing you're going to be focusing on over the next couple weeks. So, usually that could just take 30 seconds per person if they already know what's going on. And that pretty much rounds out the meeting. So anything else I'm forgetting there, Rob?
No, I think earlier in our mastermind groups, I'm not going to say that we don't take it as seriously. I think we've evolved and we're very comfortable with our flow. But if you recall back in the past, we used to know our quick wins, like we would write them out, we'd write out the hot seat. We would know our upcoming goals. I can personally say I don't do that as much as I used to. So, a little bit of time on the front end, just think about your goals. So when it comes to your turn on the call, you're having something meaningful to say rather than just spitting something out.
Yep. And, on that note, for the upcoming goals, like going back to some of our very early meetings, we've done this in multiple groups too, where like we didn't understand how much we could accomplish. So we would say like 10 goals and we would only be able to get one done, right? So then it became very apparent that, well, we can't do as much as we think we can. And that's why, we don't have 10 goals anymore. We have like one, like that's the most important thing. That's the thing like we're accountable for. So we whittled it down quite a bit.
I think it speaks to like the way we've evolved too and grown in our business. We used to just be so in the weeds and do this, but now we're just like, okay, what's the one or two most high level things we need to accomplish? So pat on the back.
Yeah, we've done good. The agenda portion, right? So I told you quick wins, hot seat, and upcoming goals. Sounds straightforward, right? The thing is you have to have someone facilitating the meeting, and when someone is, on minute 5 of their quick wins, the facilitator should have chimed in at like minute 3 and said, hey, remember, we're keeping it quick. We got to keep the meeting moving. And then, you have to do this in a diplomatic way to make sure, no one gets their feathers ruffled or anything like that. But it's really important to be able to run the meeting. And I think, this is the skill that I didn't realize I had that is so powerful to just say, hey, I'm sorry, Rob. We need to move on. Like any last thing you want to mention, I think we got your point, that kind of thing.
And I don't think I've ever told you this story, but about 2 years ago, I had some friends I was in a Skype SEO group with, and we decided to form a mastermind. They kind of pushed for it. I was the group leader, and unlike you with your kind of project management background, I never really ran any meetings ever, right? So I think I'm terribly suited for this position. We did one meeting and it failed. It flopped. I didn't have the heart to like cut this person off.
Oh, really? So they just kept going on and on?
Yeah, so,
It's
trying
tough.
to grow as like a manager and be more like, okay, yeah, it's a huge skill to have for this.
Yep, and it's awkward, and you could imagine. I mean, I learned this from actually sitting in meetings with like people in the office across the table, and you're like, you have to interrupt them like in person, face to face, which is like maybe I think harder, especially when at the time I was like a consultant, so usually the company and the employees there with you, they don't really like you that much, and there may be like opposing like companies there too, so kind of a difficult situation, but that's how I learned how to do this stuff. And, it'll probably be awkward. It'll feel awkward as you're doing it, but you keep the meeting going and, drive the meeting so it'll end on time. You have an idea of the timeline for each of the sections and how long a person has. You don't have to sit there with a stopwatch or anything, but like, if there's a person talking about their hot seat and they've talked for 10 minutes and they're starting to repeat themselves, like you could just say, hey, we get the point, we got it, let someone give you input. So really important. And the way the facilitation should work is you really should rotate. So it depends on the dynamic of the group. I suppose that I'm such a strong personality. I'm not, though, but it's fine. Like, I kind of keep it going, and I'm going to, call out Rob here, give you a pat on the back. Like, I run like the meetings a lot of time to just kick it off and like, hey, let's move on to the next thing. Rob, why don't you talk about your quick win now, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. But there was a period where you would actually prepare the agendas in the hot seat when we would run the meetings on Google Docs. So you would, make a copy, send it out to everyone and do that. So there are pieces where like everyone should pitch in and rotate. So, I think Pat Flynn and his group, if they're still meeting the same way, I think they rotate on like the hot seat and the facilitation, just so, a person doesn't always own it. We'll get to why like we don't have to rotate in a second, and that's based on the logistics and how to run the meeting as far as like documentation and stuff. That'll be in just a second. So anyway, the next part that we're going to get to is how often to meet. So this is up to your own group. It can vary based on your goals and stuff, but we meet every 2 weeks, and that's kind of the sweet spot for us. So what do you think, Rob? What have you seen out there?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I have that other one just with the one other guy, and we meet now like once every 3 or 4 weeks. I definitely don't recommend once a week. You could try it out and see how it goes for you, but once every 2 weeks, I would say is really, really frequent. And if your group is going well, that's really good to keep those short-term goals. Did you finish what you needed to do? I think it depends, like you said, on your overall goals, who's in your group. I think 2 weeks works for a 3 or 4 person group pretty well.
I think like a weekly meeting would work if you were doing, say, like a sprint of work over 8 weeks and, it was kind of faster paced and like you were only working on that one thing. But like our businesses and the things we're working on, like we need 2 weeks to, get some progress and that sort of thing. Now it would be fun. And I think we did meet once a week for quite a while, but we ended up chatting and just, it's not a bad thing since we don't have the social aspect of like a corporate office or something. But, we realized we were just chatting and catching up too much. It was fun, but at the end of the day, we're pretending like we're working and doing a mastermind meeting, but we're just like, talking on the phone.
Interesting point you brought up too is don't forget that you guys are likely in a Skype group together. So even if you only meet once a month, let's say, and you have like a while to develop your goals and accomplish things, if something comes up that's, a quicker question, you need help from your group, you guys can message each other too.
Yep, exactly. And, just little updates like, hey, I accomplished the goal that I said I was going to do, and just to, share that. So there's always a Skype.
On the other side, though, if it gets too social, like you said, it just, even in the chat, it becomes too much just social and we're forgetting that I think there's a theme here. There's a balance.
Yeah, there's definitely a balance. And I was going to say, I do remember a couple times we would come back from, a couple days off, like each of us, and there'd be like 400 messages. And I'm like, what happened when I was gone?
Yeah. Well, I was in Thailand and my time zone was different. So I would wake up, the first thing I look at is my phone, and it's like 78 Skype messages. I was like, what?
Yeah. And I know what you mean. Like we were on the receiving end. And by the way, we were all across the world. It was really hard to meet. So, someone in like GMT time zone, Thailand, and then, US time. So it was pretty tough. It's actually still pretty tough to meet. Sure. So, okay, let's get into logistics right now. So you mentioned Skype. So it doesn't matter what format you use. We happen to use Skype, but you could, use like a Google Hangouts or, iMessage or FaceTime or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Video is great if you are not in the same location, just, especially if you haven't met the people before. So it's just a nice way to connect with folks and all that stuff. As far as like the agenda and keeping notes and all that stuff, we lean on Google Docs a little bit, but mainly we've moved over to Trello. So Rob, from your perspective, since you've done both, like, do you have any strong preference or anything?
No, I think it comes up to just determined by what your group likes. I did enjoy the Google Docs if your group is really involved and likes to prepare before the call and fill in their goals. I liked using Google Docs for that, but I guess at the same time that could be done with Trello. But I feel like Trello is a little bit, feels more independent and you're just kind of setting up your own blocks. I guess although there is comment section, but.
Yeah, I think I slightly, when you just get down to it, like Google Docs is just like less complication, but there's something that looks cool just having it organized in Trello that way.
Yeah,
so,
my explanation was really horrible. And what you said is exactly how I feel. Slight favor for Google Docs, but for some reason, I think Trello just looks and feels cooler.
Right. And the thing is with Google Docs, like you can create the document, you can put comments in, you could assign the comments to people and resolve the comments. Like it has all the functionality you need, but it's just, for some reason, it's fun to drag those cards around.
Maybe it just feels easier to ignore.
That's true. That's true. So yeah, it doesn't matter what you use, folks. I mean, you could just use a text document and email if you want, and actually now that I'm saying it out loud, email would probably be fine. I mean, the threading may get a little bit funny, but if you just have a small number of people, that would be a fine way to do it, if you just didn't care. So next on, I guess, just remember that you can be flexible with your mastermind group. So as we mentioned, we've had like different iterations. We've been in different mastermind groups. We have different formats. We've changed agendas and stuff like that. And what can happen is you meet and you keep talking about the same goals. You're not really having any sort of major issues. You're just working and it becomes kind of stagnant. Like no one's really pushing each other anymore. And it gets boring. Like nothing happens and it's just not as enjoyable. And one thing that we've done is to add like annual reviews, now quarterly reviews and stuff like that to make sure we're adhering to what we wanted to do when we did the annual goals. So that you have huge flexibility on how to structure and change up a meeting. The danger is if you're not flexible, if you saw our agenda and then you're like, we have to stick to the agenda, team, otherwise we're not doing what we're supposed to. And if it's not working, then you should adjust or like disband the group and stuff. Now, Rob, since you've been in a few, like how do you structure your other group?
We started the one that I have just with the other guy. We started with exactly what we kind of outlined, your quick wins, your hot seat, your upcoming goals. With two people, we kind of got rid of the hot seat. So we come in and we review our goals. After we review our goals, we just kind of have an open discussion. It might start with this week. You started off like, what are you struggling with? What do you want to talk about? And then I'll give some feedback. We go back and forth. Then it's kind of spirals into mine. So we kind of share the hot seat. And then at the end, we talk about upcoming goals and then go from there.
Got it. So a quick idea for, changing up a meeting format. We've done this for a few weeks and it's almost like an open discussion, or you could think of it as like a mini hot seat. So at times we've had, all three members didn't need a hot seat, didn't want to, take the floor, but they just had like one sort of smaller problem. And each of us knew like individually and personally that the problem was a small one and it wouldn't take a full hot seat. So we've kind of had some, round table type discussions where you just need about, 5 or 10 minutes and we'll go back and forth and just like sort of keep it at a higher level. So that's a great way to adapt. If no one needs the hot seat, then you're able to just, catch up, make sure you, are moving forward, and then you have full flexibility, really.
I agree. How you guys would structure your mastermind meeting.
Perfect. Thanks, Rob. Enjoyed talking with you today, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for checking out the video. Rob and I really appreciate it. By the way, if you liked the video with Rob, let us know in the comments. We, love going back and forth on different topics. If you have any suggestions, let us know in the comments. That makes it easier to come up with ideas. If you just give it to us, it's way easier. So thanks again for watching. We'll catch you next time.